Raza, he, him, his. I am a staff member at Colorado State University, currently working in the Student Leadership Involvement and Community Engagement Office. I am somebody that was born in Pakistan. I moved to the States when I was 2 years old. Other identities that are important to me, or that other identities that I will share right now, are that I was a first generation college student and graduate, and I'm currently a doctoral student in the higher education leadership program. So still continuing on as a first generation college student. Grew up in a very low socioeconomic class, working class background. Grew up in a divorced household as well, and I identify as a cisgendered heterosexual man.
Hey y'all, I'm Suchi. Pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am 1.5 Gen. I was born in India, have my citizenship still from India. But I moved when I was a year old, and for the first 6 years of my life, I traveled like in Europe, lived in the Netherlands, Paris, Germany, then moved to Toronto, Canada, lived in New Jersey, New York, El Paso, Texas, and then finally settled down in Denver, Colorado. Can I say settled down? I'm not sure what's happening. I identify as queer and trans, woman of color, and yeah. Oh, and I'm a computer science major, and partially because of my identity. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sagar. So it's not. Yeah. I think I'll start with the pronunciation first, because that's one of the most important part here. So my name is Sagar, S-A-G-R. A lot of people pronounce my name as Sagar or Sagar, but it's Sagar, like Sa and Gar, like sugar Sagar, for example. Anyway. So yeah, my pronouns are he, him, his, gender, not gender, the orientation is cisgender heterosexual. So that's good. I was born in India. I grew up there, and since I've been living in the States for like 3 years now. So that's. I'm a PhD student in atmospheric science here at CSU. So I do climate stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that's that.
Awesome. So now let's go ahead and get started with our chai. One of our first questions that we want to ask y'all is, what does APIDA mean to you? And if you're not already familiar, APIDA stands for Asian Pacific Islander Desi American.
I can get us started. To me, APIDA means just that, Asian Pacific Islander Desi American. It's a term that I feel like is becoming more and more common, I would say, across at least from a U.S. context. APIDA has become much more utilized in an academic and social setting. It's also a term that I feel like some folks may feel not comfortable accepting or adopting in a way, and so I know even within the APIDA umbrella, and specifically the Desi South Asian community, there has been some pushback about adopting the term of APIDA, because in some ways it can be seen as inclusive, but in other ways it can be seen as exclusive or not as inclusive enough. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
I definitely agree with Ali that I think when I think of the term desi, I think of desi ghee, which means pure butter, and I am not pure butter. And the term desi itself comes from it, like the literal translation means pure. And like I've had this conversation with my dad where he's like, well, aren't we all pure? Of course, like we're trying to be positive about this, and depression strikes, so I don't know about that. But I think for me it was really hard to accept APIDA, like the terminology, because I know that the Asian community is so huge, and for the longest time Indians weren't accepted as a part of the Asian community. So kind of having it now turn into a PETA feels like, oh, now you just excluded like what 1.7 billion people, and now we're here. Like, all right, whatever. But I think it's very limiting even in that way. And I personally like I don't have a solution, so I'm just going with it.
I agree with both of you guys actually about the forms and structures of this definition. I think that's a good starting point to discuss what is APIDA. Like who comes under it, who cannot. I mean, but why that person cannot. And I think, yeah, that's really important because I mean, I've been like discussing it with many of my friends who are Asian Americans or Indian Americans. That is, that the parents were probably born in India or in any other countries of that sake, but they're born here. So they say you hence have the dash American, like Indian dash American, Asian dash American with the names. And yeah, it's like, how do they identify well with me? Because I'm an Indian citizen right now, and my passport is Indian. So how well do they identify with me? Or how does they identify with the American side? Because they also have the dash American part with them. And that's again crazy. And I think, yeah, first to kind of all the questions down, what we have down here, the main, one of the main things that can help us is to identify a definition. But there's no definition to it. We don't need a definition, but, and yeah. Maybe Suchi can tell us more. I don't know.
Kind of
Yeah,
like, oh, wait, go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I just want to additionally add something else that I've been thinking about a lot about, and then this conversation, of course, has been yielding me to think about more is the whole notion of definition and terminology, right? Like who has access to different terminology, and how does terminology or words or even an umbrella term such as APIDA, how does that land on somebody depending on their experiences? And I know we're gonna dive further into our experiences and identity and what that means to us a little bit later. But I think a crux of what this first question really highlights is just how sometimes inaccessible or sometimes accessible terminology can be, and how differently it can land on other people. And so I think that's an important caveat to include for this conversation as we move forward.
Yeah, and like moving on to that, just to like make it a little bit more specific, because APIDA is such a huge umbrella term, I'm just gonna ask you, what does your identity mean to you? And then what are parts that you love and what are parts that you don't?
For me, I've always struggled with my identity. If I can be honest, I mentioned in the intro I was born in Pakistan, but I was about almost 2 years old when I moved to the United States, and so I grew up in the Western context, from a U.S. context lens, but also something to notice because I grew up in a divorced household and we moved around so much. I never really got connected to my Desi identity, my Pakistani identity, my cultural heritage, the traditional values and norms that typically are socialized at a young age. I felt really disconnected from a young age to that, and so my identity to me has been this ongoing push and pull of phenotypically I look and appear South Asian, and I'm Desi, I'm Pakistani, and sometimes I go back and forth about claiming to be Pakistani or claiming to be Desi, right? And thinking about in what spaces do I want to say that I'm Desi, or that I'm South Asian, or that I'm Pakistani. So, and because of me growing up here in the U.S., I think I've never really had a lot of friends that identify as Desi or South Asian because the spaces that I've always been around have been in rural areas where I've been around typically white people. And growing up in rural communities and not having access to the food, the culture, getting a chance to read the Quran, like reading the kalmas, all the practicing the traditions, the festivals, all of that. And so college and grad school have been really, really hard for me. And even now it's been hard for me because I feel like I'm almost an outsider within, right? And so that's something that I struggle with. I'm in an identity limbo of not being American enough because I'm brown, but not being Desi or Pakistani or South Asian enough because I don't have the language always, or I don't have the culture always that I can that I can fall back on. And my family hasn't necessarily been around me in that way also to be able to teach me some of those because of some of the things that have transpired that we can go into later.
Ali, you speak to my soul, man. Um, I think I definitely relate to that. I moved a year after I was born. Of course, I moved to different places. I had my primary education in the Netherlands, so it was whack coming to the U.S. and being like, what are y'all saying? I think for my identity, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud to be Indian. And I was taught from a young age that being American was like a super negative thing. Like if you're American, you're divorced, you're fat, you're unreliable, you're untrustworthy. God forbid if you're American. So I get like really mad when my parents are like, "Oh, you're American." I'm like, what? But I think I definitely grew up with like my parents and like the whole like family is everything regardless of abuse. Ha ha ha. Help. And I definitely grew up with like the traditions. And I think with like traditions, it's different for every family. Like literally every family has super different traditions. Like I didn't realize it until like what is it, Indian media, like where they're like, oh, we're gonna do this, and I'm like, I've never done that. What is that? I think like I had both my parents, or I still have both my parents, but we are constantly like around the idea of like we are Indian, like we are proud of it, and it's great. But I think I definitely too struggle with the idea of being like Indian because around these parts they're called Native American, and it really bothers me because like what idiot, like I know it's Christopher Columbus, but what idiot kept the Indian thing going? Like who the what? Anyway, I have a lot of issues with a lot of things. I have a lot of issues with a lot of white people, let's be real. And I think I struggle with that so hard because I say I'm Indian, and I definitely been asked the question, oh, dot or feather, and I'm like, I will kill you. I will come and murder your family. Of course, I haven't said that, but I definitely have thought it. No, I was looking at the question. Thank you. But I think the things I love about my culture is like the food, oh, the festivals, oh my God, the music. Like sometimes if you see me walking down at CSU and you see a smile, I'm listening to Indian music because I am partying. But I think definitely I hate the intergenerational trauma that comes with being Indian. I hate the 200 years of slavery that comes with being Indian. I hate that dark people or darker skin toned people are discriminated against, because honestly they're more Indian than like, and I hate saying this, but they're more Indian than like us white tone, like light skinned, because originally Indians were like darker skin tone, and then the British came, and then this happened. I am white as day. Do you see this? It's also probably because of the lighting, but you know. I have a significantly hard time dealing with my skin tone because I know that it comes from some sort of sexual abuse. And that's like that's a therapy thing, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, for me it should be straightforward. Yeah, I'm an Indian citizen and I'm proud of it. It's as simple as that. Huh. But yeah, what does my identity mean to me? And I mean, I can say that I'm an Indian citizen living in the States, and what does that mean to me? That means many things actually, that I'm seen differently, obviously, as Suchi and Ali might agree to me, that we are seen differently. And that, I don't mean that we are seen differently. And what does that mean? Is that obviously skin color? I'm slightly brown, so that's there. uh, and because of that, people don't tend to think of me as them, and that is something very apparent in my department. Let me kind of start my complaint mode on. Anyway, so I'm not complaining, I'm just kidding. So my department is atmospheric science, and it's a lot whiter. It's super white, and I'm probably, there are only 2 Indian students in there out of like 100, 200, whatever. And probably like even the Asian students are also less. So overall, the international community is super small in my department. And our department, kind of the kids, kind of the students hang out in like bars or somewhere, but then they probably would have house parties or whatever. And uh, it's like, it's all white people in there. And once I went to Belgian brewery with them, like they're all 20 white students, and even Belgian brewery is more whiter than we think. And I was having this get out feeling in there. If anyone has watched the movie Get Out, but that was in a funny sense, and I made the joke with them, and they were super chill. Like, so that's the. But overall, the thing was that when we are hanging out, they were mostly kind of talking with themselves, because obviously it's like they made better friends than I, and in that short period of time, and I often feel excluded. I don't know, but that's kind of the part. I want to say that it's like, if in a group of like 50 white students, there's a high chance that those 49 would talk within themselves, and I will be left alone, or kind of I'll need to. So here's the idea: as an international student, because my accent is different and I don't look kind of the way people look here, there are 2 schools of thoughts. One of them is obviously that, okay, you are an international student, and hence we will take care of you, because you kind of left your house and came here, and hence let us accommodate you. So that's the first part. The second school of thought is that, oh, you are an international student, and hence you should make efforts to talk with us, or kind of you should probably put some more effort and kind of coming out and hanging in the American way, or kind of in the white way, or whatever way that is. I'm not specifying any particular way here, but and kind of more often than not, I've felt the second school of thought agreeing more to my experiences, and hence that's kind of, I answer the question of what does identity mean to you, and it means that I'm an international student and I need to make some more effort in kind of to gel up with people, rather than it being a natural process, because it's like we are all in the age of like 19 to 25. I'm on the later side, I'm in the mid 20s. So but but the idea is that it's like it should be all natural for kids to kind of just okay, you are a kid, I'm a kid, and let's be friends kind of thing. But it's not, or at least I haven't experienced that. So that's that. And that kind of indirectly answers the question of what are the parts of it you don't like. And yeah, so that's that. But yeah, the parts I love are a lot too. So there are bright sides to things, and it means that I can kind of now connect to a broader community here. So that's one. Second is that I kind of have friends in both the countries now, or I can speak 3 different languages, 4 different languages. Who knows? So that's the part I love. That I have friends at many places now. So that's the third thing is I can identify to, or I can connect to people from various communities now, because I have had the experiences of living in both the countries, talking with both the types of people and getting the experiences. So yeah, that kind of briefly identifies the aspects I love and don't love. Mainly the don't love part is that because I'm an international student, I need to make some more effort in making friends. So yeah, making friends is not natural for me. Making white friends is not natural for me. So that's the aspect. Right, we can fully move to the next question. If anyone from the audience has any question. I don't see any in the chat.
Yeah. If not, our next question is going to be, what are your experiences with the model minority myth? And if you don't know what that is, just for sake of time, I'm going to post it in the group chat.
Great.
The model minority myth. Before going into that, I think it's important to note that the model minority myth is rooted in, it's a juxtaposition that's rooted against anti-blackness, right? And so it's really important to point out that that this is something that essentially elevates in the eyes of the oppressor, the white man, the white person, that Asian folks are the model minority, and that bodes the question of compared to whom, right? And so it's in direct comparison towards Black folks, towards specifically, and of course others as well, but specifically it's hedged against folks in the Black community. My experiences primarily with it is that my parents, my family relatives, honestly, they believed and bled into the model minority myth, right? We came to the U.S. for a better education, for a better life, and folks would always tell my parents. My mom worked at McDonald's. My dad was a taxi driver growing up, and folks would always say, "Oh, like y'all are such good people, and you know you can, you're such hard workers." You know, and then again, thinking back on that, when I was a kid, I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, oh yeah, like, okay, gas me up, like I'm doing good, you know, my family's doing good. But as I reflect on it, as I become more knowledgeable about the intent around what the model minority myth is, it really pits marginalized and disenfranchised communities against each other, right? And so again, elevating Asian Americans and continuing to oppress Black folks, Black Americans. I was always told that I need to be one of three things: an engineer, a doctor, or go to law school. And I was not a fan. I was not a fan of that, but because I was always somebody that always listened to my mom and tried to be a good person and listen to family, I was like, okay, I'm gonna study political science because that's kind of where my passion is, and then I'm gonna do pre-med, but I'm not gonna do engineer. So I got two options. But then the more I got into it, the more I realized that that's not going to be something that's going to be up my alley, and I really want to do something that I really like, something that I'm passionate about. And I recognize that statement itself is also very privileged, right? To have the opportunity to decide for myself what I want to do, given an understanding that my family members came here and made a lot of sacrifice. But anyway, yeah, there's been a lot of different experiences with the model minority myth, that a lot of which that I perpetuated growing up. And now, as I've gone through college and my master's program, and now that I'm a staff member and doing some doctoral work, I've really been trying to push against the model minority myth, really trying to counteract that, and really, whenever folks bring it up, ask them the simple question of, what does it mean? Like, what does model minority myth mean to you, right? Like, who is it in relation to? Who is it compared to, right? And then when I ask that, that's when white folks in particular are like, oh snap, like, okay, So I think folks are starting to get a little handle of why it's such a problematic myth.
Ollie, you're really speaking to my soul. Oh my God, like, oh, we gotta talk more, man. We gotta talk more. I think I agree with you gotta be an engineer, a doctor, or an accountant because my mom's an accountant. And I fucking hate math. Like, no thanks. But I think, yeah, it comes from a very privileged, that's a very privileged statement, and I'm glad you recognized that. Because like the reason I chose computer science was around the fact that like the model minority myth, and I had like something to prove to like people. Also, I want money, and that's got a lot of money. I think when I was I think the way the model minority myth works, and I only can speak for myself, is it's very external and internal. So internally, I was always like, I got to be the best, like no one ever was. Got to catch them all. I don't know. And with like that, like I'm not very competitive. I've never been competitive. I don't give a shit about competitiveness. I chose the wrong field. But I think with like all of that of like you got to be the best came from a place of struggle. My dad was really poor growing up. My mom she wasn't poor, but she like we had difficulties. Like my dad changed jobs like every 2 years. Even now he's like, you should just change your job every 2 years. And I'm like, I like stability. And like a lot of it came from like for a part of my life I was homeless and my dad used to sleep on the floor and let me sleep on the bed. And I think that's why for me being in computer science made sense because I don't ever want to see those days again. And when I was younger and in primary school, I don't know if this adds to the model minority myth or like, I don't know, but I had a Black woman as my professor or teacher from 3rd to 5th grade, and she would tell me things like, you're never gonna be a leader, you're so immature. I was 9. So like now that I like see some of my friends from elementary school, they're like, yeah, I'm in psychology, and I'm like, I'm in computer science, big smart brain. So there's something around that. Don't laugh at me, Carl, I'm hilarious. And I think it also comes from a place of shame that I can't be as good as my parents were. Like my parents both have 3 master degrees. I'm hoping that if I get a PhD, that'll cancel those 3 master degrees out. That's how that works, right? And like, I know my parents don't want me to struggle, but I don't think that's like an option. Like there's struggle regardless. As far as like this is just like I'm just pouring out my feelings, but like I have to take another semester for like my 4-year track because depression, and because I feel like my goodbye was taken away from me in this like pandemic, and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to everything that was good to me at CSU, and I don't think that was fair to me. I don't think that was fair to anyone. So hence I'm taking another semester because I don't think I deserve this. And there's so much shame with that. Like I'm genuinely like, oh, I should have just gotten an F. Like at least then it would have made sense like that I'm taking the next semester. Like why am I doing this? So yeah, I think it comes from a lot of shame. I think it comes from a lot of external shame, internal shame. And for me, it comes with class as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I agree with both of you actually that it's kind of an issue everywhere, to be honest. I mean, you can start looking at many movies and they would have a prominent scientist, a doctor, or kind of someone from research side, mainly an Indian, or probably from the Asian community in general. Like, hey, doctor, did you identify that virus or did you identify that code or something? And I mean, that's kind of a piece in the puzzle kind of question. That it's kind of that's how people have identified the broader Asian community, including including the Southeast Asian and South Asian community. You that if you are someone from that part, you are probably more intelligent in that side. But yeah, in such movies, they don't show an Asian or an international for that sake. Let's kind of use the word international born or international relevance here. At least I'll use it for now. That they'll not use such a character as a leading position in the leading position like a boss or something. And that's kind of somewhere written here that it's kind of that it's kind of the idealization is that such people from such communities are great workers, are great people. They have work ethics and whatnot, but they are followers. They will do stuff. They'll not lead stuff, and that's again the question here. And I don't know. I mean, it's true here. I mean, by true it means the feeling is true, not the idealization. That is totally false, and I agree with that. And for example, for me, I have been living in the States for 3 years now. So, and my only interaction was with, or in terms of work, was with my advisor, who is an American person, and they think that I would use she. She thinks that she's very open in that sense. It's like, okay, you work with your own potential. You don't need to be working super hard because you are an international student, or I don't expect like 1.5 times normal productivity because you are someone from there. And that kind of, I mean, and this is something of a discussion we had actually with my advisor. And I think that's a problem people have. And for example, a lot of groups would hire Asian students more because of the nature of the work, simply because of the nature of the work demands more coding or demands more just technical stuff. And they think that in students from international background, because they are needy, I mean, they need funding, and hence they could attend a good school here. They'll work their asses off, and a lot of that is prevalent in a lot of research labs, that they would hire students from those backgrounds whom they think that those students can work probably much. They're hard workers is what the feeling, and that's kind of puts into the model minority myth, that those kids are probably hard workers than other ones, not necessarily more intelligent or more kind of path breaking or kind of trailblazers, or for their sake, but they're hard workers, and that's something is a definition a lot of groups put in. Trust me, and I can speak of that because I'm in the research part of things, and I haven't been in the States for as long as Ali and Suchi are here, so I've been living here. So, but yeah, that's a issue even in the research side of model minority myth. And again, that puts into the question that are Filipinos not as intelligent as Chinese Asians or Chinese Americans? Or as someone from Thailand, probably not intelligent as someone from Japan, or something like that. It again pits two classes or two broader classes against themselves, and that's again not a good thing. So.
I think Katrina's might be frozen right now. So our next question is, sorry, give me one moment. What are your experiences with the perpetual foreigner myth? And then if y'all don't know, for the sake of time, I'll also be putting the perpetual foreigner myth into the chat.
Yeah, perpetual foreigner. I think that kind of ties in a little bit with the model minority myth as well. For me, I think just physically being brown and being somebody who was born in Pakistan and immigrated to the U.S., I don't know if I'll ever fully be accepted as American, right? I'll ever be accepted as a U.S. citizen, even though I became a naturalized U.S. citizen 4 years ago, last week, actually, 4 years ago last week. And so regardless of my citizenship privilege from a U.S. context, being a naturalized U.S. citizen, I'm always going to be seen as an outsider. And I think it kind of ties back to how I answered a couple of the other questions already. Is no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter how I speak, no matter how much education I have, I'm always going to be in this identity limbo. Always going to be this outsider, looking within, right? Regardless of what I have, how I show up, who I'm around, and it really sucks, because again, tying back into the last question, even though like where I'm being socialized into saying, oh, like you're such a good minority, you're obedient, you're doing this work, you're a hard worker, you're doing all this, even though folks say that, they'll never accept me fully for who I am and what all of my identities encompass, right? And what I bring to the table, or even understand my background and lived experiences. And at the same time, it's again, as folks were sharing, it continues to pit other ethnic and racial identities against one another, and it continues to elevate the Asian identity from a general sense up, right? And then what that does is that causes mental health issues it causes mental health problems for folks who might be buying into this notion of, oh, like I have to keep working harder, I have to keep producing, I have to be productive, I have to be seen as enough in this context, I have to be seen as acceptable, and so let me go ahead and try to acculturate, right? Acculturation is the whole notion of trying to assimilate into the dominant society or dominant culture in a particular setting, right? And so trying to acculturate to a U.S. context, I know for sure I have acculturated. I have become more white. I've bought into whiteness because of this lack of closure, this lack of enoughness, this lack of feeling complete based on my identities that I hold, based on what I've heard from the media, based on what I've heard from folks. And even after 9/11, especially after 9/11, that was like a defining moment for me. That was the first time that I really saw myself, that I really recognized that I was not like other people. It was explicitly mentioned to me that I was not like other people. And that's when my family and I were really started to get much more affected. And of course, in the years since, we've seen, the Muslim ban that came about. And even though some Desi or South Asian folks may not identify as Muslim, they're still going to be seen as this foreigner, as somebody that doesn't belong in this country, as somebody who's coming in and invading or taking our jobs or doing this or doing that. And so it's hard to sit with, and I don't know if it'll ever change. But as an optimist, I'm hoping and willing to try to work towards creating that change. And as an educator, I'm hoping that what we do in the classroom and in how we show up from a student affairs side of things, that we can continue to spread that around. But it's going to take more than just a few of us to be able to create that change.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Ali said. I think for me, it's really hard because every time I'm like, oh yeah, I was born in India, everyone's like, oh, exotic, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. No. Internally screaming constantly. And there's like, I don't know, I'm very proud that I was born in India, but recently I feel like when someone's like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, Aurora, Colorado, which is some bullshit because I'm not. But and they're like, where are your parents from? And I'm like, Aurora, Colorado. That's also some bullshit. Where are your grandparents from? Aurora, Colorado. That's also some bullshit. Where's your name from? Aurora, Colorado. That's also some bullshit. Followed by, that is also some bullshit on your end. But I just don't want to deal with it. I think that's like the main reason that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm from Colorado. No, I'm not, but I just don't care. And I don't want to hear any of your like, oh, I know a couple things about Indians. Like, I don't give a shit. I don't care about your experience. I don't care about what you have to say about Indians. Drive, Uber driver. It's honestly because I've had the most like racial experiences in my life with Uber drivers. It's not even a joke. It's just so real. I hate people. And I think with like the perpetual foreigner and the enoughness kind of thing, I think that will always continue to be a struggle because everyone's like, hey, you want to be American, but you never will be. Ah ha ha ha. At literally every like white person on this planet. Okay, not everyone, but you know, you get it. The white people TM. Yeah, that's how I feel about that.
Great. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I mean, a good part of me going the last is that I get to agree with a lot of you and hence say speak only a little. So that's great. Yeah, white perpetual foreigner myth. And how does I don't relate to this concept as much as you both would, because in my mind, I mean not in my mind, I mean of legally and in my mind, I'm still an Indian citizen. So, and I'm proud of that. So that's that. And I don't want to be associated as an American in the first place. So that kind of keeps me away from this question. But anyway, I agree with both of you. And the question of how it will ever end. Let's talk a bit about that. And I think Ali and Suji both can unmute and maybe we can kind of chat here a bit about how this might end, how this. Yeah, for example, in corporate, because the root of this effect is that we look different. It's because we have different names and because our accents might be slightly different. Not sure. I mean, not always. A lot of people from who have their parents or grandparents born in different countries, and now those kids are now American. They totally speak in whatever accent they're born into. Like it could be a California Valley accent, or it could be a New Yorkie accent, or it could be anything. So accent is not an issue here. So the issue is that our names are different, we look different, and hence people might always continue to associate us with whatever our identities are, not what our parents or grandparents' identities were or are. And I'm not sure how that might ever end, because it's like the next generations might also look like us, like our progenies might also look like us, or to a large extent might look like us. And yeah, that might always remain, that the facial features are kind of the name part of it will always be an issue. Yeah, or at least the surname wouldn't go away in a lot of places. And I don't see that to be ending. So then the change would not come from us, kind of like a few generations down, all the international origin kids or their kids starts to look like American, so a Caucasian for that aspect. And so that the change will not come from that side. The change has to come from the other side. And I don't know how. Maybe Ali and Suchi might have more inputs here.
I mean, I think there's no real solution. Let's be real. This has been systematically in the entire world for a very long time, because someone was salty about the cold weather in Europe, and then they were like, because no, okay. I think to say, I think there's some kind of, there's no nice way to say it. I think it's bullshit. I think that, like, oh, our surnames are going to change. No, I'm going to fucking, do you know what Verma means? Verma means a kingdom that resides in the sky. like, I'm gonna fucking own it. Like, my dad is super cool. His name is Pavan Kumar Verma. Note it, write it, memorize it. It means God of Wind, Prince, and a kingdom that resides in the sky. I am proud of my father. He is, because that's what he is. He's a goddamn king. And if he, like, I will like, my children, they will be adopted from India if I ever have them. I don't know. I'm only 22. And they will have Indian names. I don't give a shit if they're white. I don't give a shit if they're like something else. And honestly, the answer is that white people need to realize that they're fucking full of shit and they are supporting this like overall whiteness. There's no clear solution other than people need to fucking understand that, like, you are an immigrant. You white people, you took out Native Americans. You are the immigrant. We built this place. America is great because of immigrants. Fuck you. Anyway, I have a lot of pent up feelings and I feel a lot of rage towards people who are like, well, maybe you should like change your name. No, my name is Suchi Verma. Say it right or get the fuck out. Thank you. Thank you for my TED Talk.
Yeah. No, I super appreciate all of that. And I think just kind of popping back in to provide another perspective, I think, Sagar, I think you mentioned something that I think is striking, and that's, does somebody who, in your case, moved to the U.S. A couple 3 years ago, like, do individuals want to be identified or classified as American in the first place, right? And so I think there's a lot of ownership that folks also have to take. Is do I want to be identified as an American? Do I want to be identified as Pakistani? Do I want to be identified as Desi? Whatever the terminology is, whatever I feel like is the acceptable way that honors my culture, my heritage, my ethnicity, my race, what have you. And so I think that's the other piece around it that I think further complicates that. And then in addition to that, the whole notion of foreigner, if we really think about it, going back to I think a little bit about what Suchi was getting at was, all of us are settler colonists, right? We're all settling on this land that doesn't belong to any of us except for the true native and indigenous folks whose land have been stolen and occupied for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, right? And so when I think about it in those terms, like what does it mean to be deemed as a foreigner, right? And how am I also continuing to perpetuate that by claiming that that I am American, right? Or that I am X, Y, or Z. And so again, like, it just adds a little bit more complexity to what we are already talking about. And I don't expect there to be any solution or resolution, or even, I think in the comments, Carl noted that this will end when war ends, right? Will war ever end? I truly don't believe war will ever end, right? I feel like there's this whole capitalistic money, like, folks are just snatching up money, right? Just like they snatched up lands. And it's all rooted in greed and capitalism that leads to land grabbing, and that leads to folks with power labeling and mislabeling and causing folks to be pushed down.
I definitely say it, Shion. Say it loud and proud. I think I definitely agree with eat the rich. Yes, eat the rich. Eat them.
Bernie canceled his application. That's the saddest part here.
Eat the rich. Genocide the white people. I'm ready. I'm not ready. I know, Carl, but you gotta like say it for like with peace in my mind. Ali, I like how you said that, like, I don't think war is gonna end, but you call yourself an optimist.
I mean, that's
you out on that, but I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, that's a quote, right? That only the dead have seen the end of the war. So.
Oh.
On a serious note. So, yeah.
I think I definitely agree with Ali that like there's just already so much there. Like there is so much, like capitalism, systematic oppression, like genocide, all those things. And I think when it comes to like the idea of being an American, I know that in India, for like at least in my area, or even like just in my family, as I said, every family is different. Every person is different. Oh my God. That like it's just a terrible thing to become American. And I think the reason for me why I want to be an American is because I feel like I owe something to the people of color here. And I feel like I don't want anyone to see the same struggles of like the perpetual foreigner or the model minority myth. I don't think we deserve that as a community. I don't think Black people deserve to be shot at like the plain sight. I don't think Hispanics or Latinx people deserve any of just the amount of racism and the amount of sexism and the heteropatriarchy. Like none of us deserve that, and there is some bitch ass white man who is like out here like, yeah, you do, and I will fight, like, because no one deserves to be treated like this. No one deserves to be felt like they're not enough, and I feel like I owe something to those people. Like, you will not see the same thing that I will. And saying that, I don't have the solution. I don't know what's going on. I'm only 22.
I'd like to answer one of Ali's question, that because there's this heterogeneity of people like me who are students at the moment and who have not actually moved but have just come here for education. We don't identify ourselves as Americans, but there are people like you or many other who are like literally born here or probably moved to the States when they're super young and they grew up in this identity, and so they have to they claim it's not a claim, they associate themselves more with a lot of them as Americans than Indians, or probably it's a mix, and hence there's this whole spectrum of, there are many Indian Americans or Asian Americans who probably associate themselves more as American than Asians, and there would be some who might associate themselves more as Asians than Americans, and there might be people in middle who kind of would like to take both of best of both worlds, or probably none of any world, or kind of. And so there is this wide spectrum, and hence it kind of further complicates the whole question of perpetual foreigner theory or myth, that who gets to be an American, or who gets to be called as an American, versus who gets to be asked that, oh, where are you from? No, where are you from? And yeah. And I think, yeah, that spectrum is a funny place to be in. And we could be in any of those parts. And I'm an addition to it, that I'm not an American and I don't want to be associated as an American. And because I'm here for like few years, and then I might go in some other country and work there, and might go to the fourth country, fifth country, 10th country, whatever. And I'll explore until life ends. And I don't want to be associated with any country for that sake. But that, because of me, the struggle of the people who are here, that shouldn't get stopped, or I mean, that shouldn't get suppressed, in the sense that, because it's like, because there might be someone who might talk with you that, I met someone named Sagar the other, then he was like, I don't want to be an American. I don't want to be called an American. Why do you want to be called as an American? Or why do you associate yourself as an American? I think that spectrum is a complicated thing. I don't know how that might ever end. And yeah, because it's like, and in all the Netflix shows or anything, there's always this, and in high schools, there's always this love stories, but all the love stories are generally between a white girl and a white boy. I mean, there's only the first thing that came out, that all the boys part, or kind of, it has now 2 parts, right? I'm not sure, only 1. But anyway, so that movie, it's kind of probably the first one, or at least the first one that I'm aware of, that has an Asian character as a lead, but it still had to show like a variety of boys on the other side. Yeah, I don't know, that complicates things always, that because we don't see people like us in mainstream roles or mainstream characters, and hence the broader community is not just ready to accept that fact. Yeah, it's complicated. Anyway, so we are at 6 p.m. I'm Mega and Katrina. Do we need to end at 6? I really like this discussion. I'm willing to go for like half an hour more or 40 minutes more. So.
Yeah. So because this is virtual, if you guys are willing to. Like if you don't have anything going on, we can extend this try. It's like thumbs up, thumbs down. How's everyone feeling?
Great.
What? Okay, cool. So let's actually move on to some of our other questions. So how would you say your identity has framed who you are today? So like whether that be like what you're doing for college, what you want to do in the future, just that sort of thing.
How my identity has framed who I am today. Um, yeah, that's a big question. And I think this really ties in with some of my responses to the other questions about, you know, migrating to the U.S., growing up in a divorced household, growing up in a poor, uh, poor family. We were in Section 8 housing. We had food stamps. Cancer was really a big part of my growing up. Of course, 9/11 was another huge aspect that was a monumental shift. Being a first-generation college student, also, allowed me to think about, do I deserve to be getting this education? Am I going to, persist and graduate, so on and so forth. And now as a doctoral student and as someone that has a lot of privilege, working full time, going to school, having two college degrees, and health insurance and all of that. Like, I think my identity has really shaped and framed me in a lot of different ways. I think it's really exposed to me a lot of the inequities that exist in this society from a U.S. context. But I think it also has shed the light that there are people that are trying to do some good work, and it's always impossible for me to separate my identity from what I'm doing, right? And so by that I mean, like, my identity is very, very personal to me, right? But recognizing that it's so personal to me, I don't think I can ever take off me being Desi, me being Pakistani, me being a first gen, me having those lived experiences that I named before, me being a cisgendered heterosexual man. I don't think I could take that off. And oh, there's Carl. I don't think I could ever remove that in any situation or environment that I'm in, because I think all of that informs how I show up, how I enter into spaces, how I've been socialized into believing. I talked about the identity limbo that I experienced, about not being Pakistani or Desi enough, but definitely not being American enough because of how I look and the identities and experiences that I've had before as well. So what I'm trying to do now in my doc work is I really want to research Desi student affairs professionals. And in particular, I want to look at how their identity and or leadership development has informed their upbringing or informed their work and how they see themselves in this field in particular. And I think that's going to be helpful for me in a way, because it's not just going to be an opportunity for me to go through some mental gymnastics, but it'll also be some heart work, right? It'll allow me to connect more with this culture, these groups of individuals, these folks that I have not really had that opportunity or experience of connecting with growing up, because I grew up in such white rural communities. And in a way, I rejected my identity in a lot of ways, because I tried to acculturate to what my friends wanted me to be more like, and I think a prime example of that is me joining a white fraternity when I was an undergrad, right? And me being involved and doing things intentionally based on what I thought was the right thing to do, or as I'll say it now, as a white thing to do, right? And so, I reflect back on a lot of how I interacted in high school, in middle school, and especially in college, and even how I perpetuate that whiteness today. And I think I really did myself a disservice growing up because I tried to reject more of my identity rather than accept it and accept some of the knowledge that my grandparents and relatives tried to share with me when I was younger, but I just kind of brushed them off, and now it's too late because they're not around anymore. And so I have a lot of pain that I have to sit with and I have to live with now because I rejected that. And so I'm trying to unlearn some of those pieces that I've been socialized into my life and try to relearn and be a better person in terms of connecting with my culture and my identity and people that I have in a large way have rejected. So I guess that's kind of how my identities and lived experiences have framed who I am today and how I hope to interact and engage moving forward.
I definitely feel that last part of like, I remember being younger, you know, back in my day, uh, and like wanting to be like super white. I remember like I wanted to change my name into Emily. Oh man. Yeah, I know it's whack. Now I'm just like, okay, this is what it is. What it is. Um, but I forgot the question. Oh, how does like identity and stuff. I think for me, growing up, watching Indian news was always like, and watching a lot of criminal shows. India has some really weird criminal shows. They're super good, but like really scary. Like I would hear about mother-in-laws, specifically paternal mothers, like destroying their daughter-in-laws. Like some people would throw their girl babies off cliffs or over stairs, and like there's like murder for like some bullshit that like, oh, you didn't love me enough. Shut the fuck up. Just like really dumb shit. And I'm sure that's like the soap operas. Like I don't know if you've ever seen like an Indian soap opera. I don't recommend it. It's Hisalata. It's a lot of stuff. But I think just like seeing that kind of stuff, I felt like something like something felt wrong. Like this isn't how the world is supposed to be. This isn't like, it made no sense to me. And it definitely didn't make any sense to me when I like started exploring my more like social justice warrior side. And I think that's why I like started pursuing social justice so much, because like it took 57 years for India to be like, being gay is okay. Like what? You didn't tell that to the two lions who just had sex. Like what? And now we have like so much abuse in India. Like in the year 2016, there was what is it, 140,000 rapes? Are you fucking kidding me? What are you doing? Like, why is this okay? Like, what? I'm sure I know the answer, but what? And I think like, I just, no, unacceptable. I don't like it. So then I think a lot of just seeing that, I was like, yeah, someone needs to stop it. And it's not gonna be me alone, but someone's got to do something.
I like how Suchi just mutes her, so that kind of throws the ball at me. That hey, go ahead. Anyway, yeah, that's such a good question. Anyway, what's the question? How would you say your identity has framed who you are today? Huh? And for me, it's again straightforward. That my identity is Indian, and it has framed me in a lot of ways. But so it's, yeah, again, the question, let's not only narrow down the question on the context of being on the context of nationality, that my identity is Indian. I grew up in a lower middle class Hindu family. India is my country, but India is not a country. It's not a monolithic block. India is like Europe, or probably much bigger than Europe, in the sense that like in Europe, we have Netherlands or France, Spain, Germany, Austria. Um, I mean, Österreich, but it's Austria, but anyway, whatever that is. So yeah, we have different countries in Europe, and they all speak different languages. They all don't think they are kind of like each other, but they can freely roam in each other's countries. The food is different, the clothing is different, the heritage is different, and kind of India is an exact same analogy for it that we have. Probably, I would say that I'll go ahead and say that India was never meant to be one country. We were different states, different kingdoms, kind of fighting with each other, trading with each other, and kind of acting as different countries. But then the British came in like mid 1800s, kind of early 1800s, and then they kind of ruled that whole part of South Asian continent. And henceforth, kind of the war to be free kind of united everyone in that part. And hence, kind of India came to be as one country. So again, the question of what is my identity? Am I an Indian? But then India was never one country, and that is something and is a European aspect of making that whole South Asian bloc as just as name them Indian. But probably if they would have gone to one part and then the other part, so here's a fun fact. India has like 20, India has 29 states, but over 21 official languages and over 1,200 official dialects. So I'm from the state of Gujarat, which is in the western part. It's kind of like California, you can assume, and the southern states totally speak different language. So I mean, by different language, I'm not saying it's like it's not like a Valley Girl accent versus howdy y'all. It's not that different. It's more like the writing is different. It's Southern Indian languages are like Mandarin for me. I cannot read them. I cannot listen to them. I cannot speak them, or I cannot in general I cannot interact in those languages. So I need to resort to either Hindi, which is kind of an umbrella language that is starting to prevail in most of the parts. It's still not, or English, but the question with English is that not everyone knows that. So that the big story started in my own country. I'm a foreigner. And if I go to southern states, I don't know the languages. I don't know their culture because it's super different. The food they eat is super different. So that's it. So again, when we ask about what is the identity, I think I need to narrow down it a lot. That I'm from the state of Gujarat. I speak this language, and I grew up in a Hindu family, in a lower middle class Hindu family. And because the whole question with the identity part is that we need to break those monolithic blocks of identities. That we are an American, we are an I'm a German person, but I'm a French person. I'm an Indian. It's not that you grew up in a very narrow community, or kind of, by narrow I mean a narrow definition of a community, and hence you probably cannot relate to your own country in the first place. How can you relate to other countries? Like I cannot relate myself as an Indian. I'm not representative of an Indian person. I'm part of it. And if you pick 29 different people, and then we 29 would probably make one representative sample of Indians. So the question of identity is again important. That it's not a monolithic block. We need to narrow down on where you are, how did you grow up, and all that. But and then that is framed obviously, and that's the aspect, right? That me growing up in a particular household has framed my identity. How, I don't know how part. So
I think the idea around saying you're Indian, saying you're American, saying you're European. Also, it's really whack that like Europe is a continent, but Asia is also a continent, and you're like, one of these two is not the same. Like, what is going on? I think the idea behind keeping a single label is around unity. Since as we are in America seen as a minority, I disagree. We are a marginalized group. I am not a minority. Thank you. I think that being like, I'm Indian, Ali's Indian, Sagar, you're Indian, like, there's like a unity with that. Yes, does Ali know what like I eat and like what my traditions are? No. But does he get that being brown is a struggle? Absolutely. Like, he's speaking to my soul today. And I think there's more unity mentally than there is like unity in terms of like you don't meet my tradition of something like that, like I don't think that's the purpose of labels. I think labels for some people is like figuring it out for themselves, and I think labels for other people, it means like I'm trying to find people who understand my similar experience. And I think especially in the US, thank you, Ali. I think in the US, especially, if we can't find other brown people who are from the same, like, I don't want to say continent, because there's definitely, like, you got Vietnam who's yellow brown, and I don't know about that. But I think that it's very different, and trying to find community in a predominantly white space is really hard. And I think that's why we're like, yes, I'm Indian. I could totally be like, I'm Punjabi, like तुसी गल भी नहीं करते जो मैं बोलती हूँ समझ भी नहीं आता. Like I could totally just like spew out a bunch of words and no one will understand what I'm saying. It's great. But I think I find more value in the fact that I can relate to people, and I don't have to sit and be like, ah, yes, good morning, Helen. Like, yeah.
Yeah, totally appreciate that. And you know, I think what I'm also what's also coming up to me is like this identity as an American, right? Like, what is it? What does that even mean, right? What, like, who designates what American means? And the fact that in the U.S. specifically, the U.S. has co-opted the term American, and completely disregarding the fact that the U.S. is on, of course, I mentioned this before, it's on stolen land that belongs to Native and Indigenous folks, but also the fact that the U.S. is situated in North America. We're completely disregarding Central and South America as well, and yet when folks are talking about being American or not being American enough, you know, like, I think that's pretty messed up, right? And that's something that needs to be acknowledged, and something that needs to be talked about, as well as, again, it's this, the U.S. is continuing to act in this hegemonic frame of mind that they are the global superpower, that they are the global hegemon, and that everything centers around what the U.S. is. And so America, an American, of course, is going to be what it means to be in the United States of America, right? And so I think that was on my mind, that I felt like that I had to also share, and also share appreciation for Sagar and Suchi for talking about the connection piece, about having some commonalities around culture and identity and native language, food, music. Even though I was born in Pakistan, my family, for the most part, have rejected Pakistan, but they and we, I should say, have really identified more as Sindhi, which is, growing up in Karachi and Jacobabad, they're located in the province of Sindh. And so Sindh has always been this province that has faced a lot of backlash from the Pakistani government, and there's been a lot of civil unrest. And my uncle was a civil rights activist, and has done a lot of, like, we're trying to liberate Sindh away from Pakistan. And so I think that's another layer of identity that I don't often talk about, because there's a lot of complexity with it, but something that also, creates some internal struggle as well, because how specific do I want to get in terms of, like, identifying with a particular culture, even though, again, to re-emphasize on a point, even though I don't feel like I belong to any particular group, because I don't feel like I'm enough, enough. I don't feel Desi or Pakistani or Sindhi enough, even though I can speak it and I can understand it. I can't read or write. And then same with the different dialects. I can understand and I can listen to music, and I can speak certain dialects, but I can't read or write. And so I don't feel like I'll ever be accepted as enough, even in my own community, right, or communities, if you will.
Next question, please.
I do want to touch on one of Carl's questions that he posted earlier. I'll just redo it in here, but pretty much for Ali and Suchi, do you feel a sense of cultural loss? I know Ali was just talking about this, but how do you know how to deal with that? And at the same time, for Sagar, how do you, since you aren't technically like Indian American, is there any connections there, or is American versus like international a barrier sometimes?
Okay. I think I have a very different experience because I had both my parents. I still have both my parents. Oh my God. And like for me, it was like, yeah, I came back from school and I still had like my whole family thing going on. We celebrated all the celebrations that we could. But I feel like when I came to CSU, like the cultural shock, man, was whack. I didn't know there were so many white people that existed. I still don't know that many white people existed. It has not registered for like the last 4 years. We are struggling. I think I think not being able to speak my language, which is just Hindi, sometimes Punjabi, but honestly, like when you compare yourself to someone from the motherland, you don't understand shit. It is real hard. I think I definitely felt a cultural loss when I came to CSU. And I think I feel personally that there is a huge disconnect from someone who has been living in America for a very long time, or they could be born in India, they could be born here, versus like someone who's from India. For me, I think that's because I'm a social justice warrior. I'm gonna call you out on your shit whether you like it or not. If you don't understand it, go to Google. Mostly because I'm salty and depressed and I just want to eat cheese. And also, there are some very aware Indians that I've talked to, and we're really good friends. And, you know, we like to party, cheese. But I think with the international barrier, there's like this, like, I love privilege. I'm going to be real. Light skin privilege. It's a good time. Especially when I went back to India and everyone's like, she's from the US. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. Wear the crown. Love it. Picture it. We here for it. Privilege is not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing if you have it. But I think also the barrier of understanding language and only being well, I can speak Hindi, so like I go from a mix. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As a kid, I used to be like, my goda hurts to like my white teacher, which means my knee hurts. She had no idea what I was on about. I had no idea what I was on about. I still don't have any idea what I'm on about. But I feel like a lot of Indians from India who come here to like for just education or for any other like the land of opportunities, which is bullshit. I think they come here with that like lens of like I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do everything and it's gonna be great. And like I definitely had some Indian was like, you must be so proud to be living in the land of opportunities. And I was like, absolutely not even a little. We're very upset out here. So there's some people who get it and there's some people who are like the shades, like tinted, like dark AF, like they're blindfolded. And that's my personal opinion about certain people who I meet from India. Or like it's very model minority, basically. Like they're like, oh, just keep your head down, like just like do the work and everything will be fine. Don't argue, because even though they're wrong, don't argue, like they don't matter. Like it's not that they don't matter, it's the fact that you still have to explain bullshit to them. not bullshit, but like you got to explain everything to them so they understand that you are disrespecting them. But yes, that is how I feel.
Ali, you can go. I think both of your questions or both of your perspectives might be connecting. So,
Okay, thank you. Do I feel a sense of cultural loss? Yes, absolutely. And I think that's really come out in some of my answers that I've provided so far today. And it really sucks, right? Because I'm never going to be able to. Um, I feel like I'm never going to be able to truly experience the culture that I rejected at such a young age because of wanting to acculturate into this dominant culture in the U.S. And that really, you know, that's something that I'm gonna have to live with and have to reconcile with and work against and toward better understanding my culture. And I think the other piece is that growing up, I never really had brown friends. Um, Specifically, I never had friends that were Pakistani or Indian or Bengali or Sri Lankan or anyone else from the South Asian diaspora, right? And I think part of that again was me trying to fit into what was popular or acceptable and right and white specifically, and that really sucks because now it's just a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of missed storytelling, a lot of missed understanding of my own history, of my family's history, and some of those folks that had that knowledge are no longer here with us today in a physical form. So I'm not able to capture that, and so how do I deal with that? And at the same time, how do I deal with that? I think now it's just a matter of trying to unlearn what I've been socialized into believing is the right thing to do, and trying to relearn as best as I can. You know, I'm not the young person I once was before, so learning new things doesn't come as easy to me anymore. So I'm trying to relearn some things from my family and trying to get connected with family. But I think what this also, as I'm processing out loud, what this also illuminates is the disconnect that I've always had with family. I've always had a complicated relationship with my family, and part of that is because of the harm, the misogyny, the abuse that has existed in my family. You know, I know later on there's gonna be a question about, you know, like men in my culture specifically, are the dominant folks, right? And push women aside, and you know, are treating women like servants and treating kids like servants, and all of that, and that really sucked. And that really thank you, Suchi. Yeah. But yeah, so I've always had a complicated relationship with family, and I feel like because I wasn't able to fully understand my culture and traditions, I was never able to build a bond with my family and connect with them in a different way, because they are always going to see me as Americanized. And even though I try and practice, and you know, I've been really trying to cook and immerse myself in some of my own family history, and obviously I love Pakistani and Indian movies. I watch those all the time, but I feel like it goes back to this notion of enoughness. I'm not going to feel like I'm ever going to be culturally competent enough to understand my own culture that I was born into, because I rejected it from the get-go, and that sucks. And at the same time, being in the U.S., I feel rejected also because of how I look, because of how I speak sometimes, because of my background and my lived experiences that other folks cannot necessarily relate to and relate with. So yeah, I just try to do, and I try to acknowledge and recognize my own faults, my many faults that I currently have, and a lot of mistakes and transgressions that I've committed in the past as well. And just try to own up to that and try to work towards reconciling and relearning what my culture is, or it's all to stop there.
Great. Yeah. Both of your points are super interesting. And so the question for me was that, okay, hey Sagar, when you meet Indian Americans here, is there any connections? Is there any connections there, or is being American too much of a barrier? So that's the second part of the question is that also the barrier of understanding the language, but only being able to respond in English. So great. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And I can say for this, given that I'm someone from India, I grew up in India, but I've interacted with people. Now Ali is also bringing his dog to the screen. Now, hey, anyway, yeah. So the aspect is that I met Indian Americans. I did my master's in Illinois, so I spent 2 years there, and I'm doing my PhD here, so kind of 3 years here. And it depends, to be honest, that some Indian Americans are kind of in the aspect that Indian Americans, by Indian Americans, I'm kind of referring to only the kids who are born here or kind of who moved here when they're super young, but the parents are of Indian origin or any other origin for that sake. So kind of that's the aspect here. The way I'm framing it is that they haven't experienced the good and the bad parts of living in India. The good parts being they haven't experienced the culture, they haven't experienced the festivals or kind of the integrated social life. So they haven't experienced that firsthand. I mean, I'm sure they have experienced it to some or a lot extent here. Like you probably, as an Indian American or as an Pakistani American, you probably would have gone to your uncle's place for Eid or Diwali or something like that, and for Ramzan, for the month of Ramadan or Ramzan or anything for that sake. So you have experienced that to some extent, but I'm sure a lot of Indian Americans or Pakistani or South Asian Americans and experienced that firsthand at the scale that we do or I did in India. So we don't connect there. But whenever we discuss, I see or I saw a lot of wanting to learn that or wanting to connect with me. So it was a lot like those kids wanted to kind of talk to me about, hey, you're Indian. I think I belong more to you than I belong to other people. And that's kind of the idea here. Language is surely a big option, a big barrier here that they speak in American accent and I have an South Asian accent. So that's how it's like if it's in a group, they will tend to be with more Indian Americans than with me because purely of the accent or kind of the language barrier there. So yeah, language barrier does come into play. But in terms of culture, I think it's a sense from them to be more associated with me because I represent someone who experienced those things slightly more. I don't know. I mean, Suchi might disagree or Ali might disagree. Or at least that is something I have experienced with the kids I have interacted with. They might be different, totally. So yeah. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Suchi and Ali? Okay. How have you interacted with someone who is from Pakistan, who is a first generation Pakistan, or Suchi, in your case, how have you interacted with someone who is from India like me? And yeah, I mean, it's basically the same question, but for you guys, from my perspective. Yeah.
Well, so I'm 1.5 gen, so I don't know what's going on with that. My parents are both first generation, and of course, my parents have had to learn the hard way of literally everything. I think I have some really good friends who are first generation like Indians, and some of them are like amazingly cool, but I see the constant like pleasing aspect. I see like a lot of like, if I just put my head down and say yes, then I can just do anything. Like it'll be fine. And I say this from the computer science like perspective because the computer science department is garbage. Destroy that building. I will do it for everyone. I hate them so much. I'm getting a degree in this. They're just very like suck it up and just do your work, and if you don't do it, you're a failure. Like that is the motto of the computer science building, and I hate them. I hate it because that's not how life works. You white men. And I think that's what like a lot of Indian Americans in that field portray. Like just put your head down, you'll be fine if you just do this, this, and this, and don't complain about it. And like I'm like, no, I have a life. Excuse me. Like I'm gonna need more time on this assignment. One day, excuse me, no. You know that we're in a pandemic. You want me to do what tomorrow? And I think that's really hard for a lot of international students because I think like they're following the model minority myth. They're trying to please. I feel like it's a lot of pleasing your parents and pleasing the people around you, because if you don't, then are you a failure? Are you like not worthy of being Indian? And I think that comes from like that enoughness part. Your turn, Ali.
Yeah, I would say that when I interact with other Pakistanis or Pakistani Americans, it's always awkward for me, right? Because I feel like I'm constantly being judged for not being Pakistani enough or Sindhi enough, right? Or Desi enough. You all could probably recognize a theme that I've been going off is just not the enoughness, right? Or the lack thereof. And so it's always an awkward interaction for me at the get-go, because I'm like, oh, like crap, like they're gonna call me out as an imposter, as somebody that isn't really Pakistani, that isn't really Sindhi, or is just like I think the terminology that sometimes gets expressed in movies is ABCD, right? American born confused Desi, right? And I feel like that's been my life, because in a way, because even though I wasn't born in the United States, I was born in Pakistan. I came here, like everything, my lived experiences have all been circulated from how I've been raised here and how I've been socialized and grew up here. Again, going back to the friends that I had, the people that I hung out with, the organizations that I joined, the things that I chose to give my time, attention, and talents towards, the things that I rejected, right? And so for me, like it's always a little tough to interact with other folks, because I feel like they can see right through me. They see somebody who's just an imposter. And then so like I think over the last couple of years, I've tried to do a better job of reaching out to folks and interacting with folks, and really trying to not care as much about what other people think. But I'm definitely a feeler, and I definitely feel a lot of things, and so that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard to reconcile with, is when you realize, when I feel like no matter what I say or what I do, or how I interact, that they're just not going to see me as me.
I agree. I totally agree with the imposter part. Okay. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I have friends here who are like me, like born in India, came here for only education and work. And whenever we have interacted with someone of an Indian American or South Asian American origin, and when they try, like, I mean, they don't try, they want to connect with us, and or in a lot of senses, in sometimes genuinely, sometimes I don't know why. And a few of my friends have felt that person is probably not being that person, and he or she is, or they are just trying to kind of gel up with us, and hence the whole notion of imposter, that hey, he didn't grow up the same way as we did. He speaks a different accent. He's a different person altogether. He grew up in a different setting, and so he's not Indian, or he's not South Asian for that aspect. And so we don't. So some of my friends had that trouble of associating them with the Indian Americans or South Asian Americans. Yeah, that's always a problem, right? Because we grew up in apartments in a densely populated city, whereas people here grew up in suburban neighborhoods with big houses, backyards, and dogs and whatnot. So it's like it's never a linear connection. But the idea is to find it, or the idea is to ignore them in a lot of cases. That doesn't matter where you grew up or how did you grow up. The aspect is when we a lot of time, I mean, you probably listen to different songs or probably different movies you watched it, but I watch different movies. That doesn't matter. The thing is that our parents all speak same languages. Our parents kind of can connect with each other. We cannot, but our parents can. And hence, do we need to connect? I don't know. Some cases yes, some cases no, because it's like now that the aspect is like you don't just go out and talk with all the Indians out there, all the Pakistanis out there, because they look you like you, or because they speak the same language as you. You don't do that. Like it's kind of the same thing with white people. Like white people don't go out and talk with every white people because they look and talk like them. So it's again the aspect of I don't need to sympathize with, or I don't need to connect with all Indians or all Asian Americans or Indian Americans. But I need to connect with the ones who are approaching me for the right reasons. That's kind of I'm not sure. Maybe Suchi might disagree or Ali might disagree. I'm not sure.
Now I'm looking at your dog. He's so cute.
Anyway, so the backstory, I'll give you a quick backstory of this. So my roommate has gone to Japan, so my house is by myself, and then I took an opportunity to foster dogs. So he's the 7th one. So he's available for adoption. Meet Ricky.
Hello, you beautiful baby.
Here.
Wait, Ricky?
Ricky, yeah, like Ricky Martin, but yeah. I'm not sure of his orientation, but yeah, he's Ricky. So
Unfortunately, we are really starting to run out of time, so I am gonna have to conclude our chai session for today. Our next session will be on April 14th at 5 p.m. So that's gonna be this coming Tuesday. And it's going to be covering Pacific Islanders. Miguel, who's one of our facilitators, is going to switch roles, be a panelist for that one. We'd like to thank all of you for contributing to the discussion. We hope to see you soon. And once again, we'd like to thank our panelists for being here. This discussion was awesome. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to extend it. And then we also have a survey that we'll Miguel just posted. So at the bottom, there's a link to a Google Forms. If y'all could fill that out, that'd be really appreciative. But yeah, we'll keep the Zoom session open a little bit if you have any final thoughts you want to say, or just want to continue the discussion a little bit. But yeah, thank you, everyone.
Aylin, I love your cat.
Thank you.